From near-death experiences to the devastation of homelessness, how and where do we find the will to overcome insurmountable odds? And when we do overcome these challenges, how do we pass that story of survival on to others? Life on the Rocks is that place where these stories are heard from those who live to tell them. And now, here is your host, Kyle Miller.
Matt Larson, man, welcome to Life on the Rocks. I'm so excited to have you on the show, brother. Are you ready to get this thing started?
I'm ready, man. I'm ready here, and I want to give. So
awesome, brother.
Do it.
Like, I've heard your story before. We were in Mastermind together, and we talked about it, and you shared that thing. And I know you're killing it in the real estate biz. You're killing it in the educational stuff as well. I know you got other things going on in your life, but it wasn't always easy, right?
No, not at all.
Man, from just the stuff that you've shared, I was just kind of blown away about the tenacity, the strength, the endurance that you had going through some of that stuff. And that's why I wanted to bring you on the show so you can share some of that.
I'm here for you, man. I'm ready. I'm ready to share and hopefully deliver some value to all your listeners, man.
Awesome, man. So tell us who's Matt and how did he get started and how did it all go?
I was not born an entrepreneur. A lot of people think that entrepreneurs are born, and maybe that's the case. Maybe I'm just maybe I'm just lucky. But I wasn't born an entrepreneur. I grew up in a small town. I'm in Illinois right now at my lake house. And the town I grew up in is probably an hour from where I live right now. I grew up in a very, very small town, 3,000 people. And, I didn't have parents that were wealthy. And I know a lot of people probably tell a story similar because there's a lot of people that have overcome a lot of, issues and challenges and be done well. But my parents were never very wealthy. And so they weren't wealthy because their mindset wasn't one from a wealthy mindset. And so I just grew up knowing what they taught me. And, I went to high school in a small school and I didn't really want to go to college. I went to college for one semester and at the end of this, I didn't do well in school. I'm not somebody that was very good at school. I graduated high school with a C average. Gotcha. And so I didn't really I didn't enjoy high school in the academic sense. I didn't really want to go to college, but everybody else was doing it in my class. And I felt like I needed to, even though I didn't really have a clue as to what I wanted to do in life.
Right.
And so I only lasted one semester. And at the end of the semester, the college told me I couldn't come back. Some people have stories of being able to say they dropped out, but I was like, they told me, you're going to ruin our stats. So your grade point average is too low, so you can't come back. So I left that and I went back to my small town, and I was 19 years old, and my dad said, hey, you got to go get a job. And so this is in the early 90s, and the economy wasn't very good back then. And there was one place hiring in the town I lived in, which was a machine shop. And so I went to work at this machine shop at 19 years old, and I did that type of work and all the way through I was 30 years old. But what happened was at 26 years old, I met this girl, and this was my first fall in love type relationship. And I was just head over heels for this girl. And I was 26. She was 4 years older than me. She was 30. And she actually, I'm a machine shop worker. I'm coming home just covered in grease every day. And she comes from a wealthy family and had money of her own, was a doctor, basically a speech pathologist. And so I was with her for about 4 years, and, it was the longest relationship I had been in at this point in my life. And at 30 years old, she came to me 4 years later, 4 years into our relationship. And she came to me and she said, hey, I want to break up. And it was tough. I was head over heels in love with this girl. And I asked her why she wanted to break up. And she said, well, I want to date somebody with status. I want to date somebody that makes money. And here I was working at a machine shop, working 12-hour shifts.
Right.
I made enough money every week to, I wasn't making terrible money, but for a machine shop worker, but my expenses definitely outran my income. And, I was deep in credit card debt and just wasn't smart with my money and didn't have a lot of it. And so, at 30 years old, I had never thought about making money. I didn't know people could make money. I didn't know that was an option. I just thought you got a job, and what you worked at your job, that's how money was made. I had never read a self-help book. I didn't even know that a self-help was a thing. I know that sounds weird right now because you can go on social media and you'll see people spreading, motivational quotes all the time, but this is before all that.
Right.
And I didn't know about, Think and Grow Rich. I didn't know about books that you could read and improve yourself. I just didn't know that was possible. It might sound weird, but it was totally true. I just didn't understand that. And so at 30 years old, and my girlfriend breaks up with me because I didn't make enough money. I didn't have status. All of a sudden, I'm trying to figure out, like, what in the heck, how can I make money? And, I was up late one night, but this is back when people actually, I don't think people watch TV like they used to, but this is back when all you had were a few channels and infomercials would come on late at night. And I saw this infomercial about, flipping houses and making money. And, for whatever reason, I don't know if it was just I'm at a point in my life that I need something. And I was convinced by watching this infomercial that if I bought the book and applied what they said, that I would make a lot of money. Right. And so I bought the book and that was my entree into real estate. And, I was naive enough to think that I could do it because I didn't know anybody else that said they tried it and didn't work.
Right. And
so I started in real estate, and I did my very first deal in November 10th, 2005. And that was really my, I didn't know how big I would get in real estate, and I really didn't know exactly where it would take me. I just wanted to make money. And I was living in a 300 square foot apartment at that point in time. And I did my very first deal within 30 days of reading the book. Now that might not seem like that impressive or cool, but I came from a family that had never bought a house. My dad always said that don't ever buy a house, always rent, because if something breaks, then the landlord has to fix it. So we were always told never to buy a house, so I didn't have that I didn't get taught money lessons because my parents didn't have any money. And so that business, that grew over time. I did more deals and more deals and more deals and more deals. And, within 3 years of my first deal, actually, I actually set a goal to be, I wanted to be cool. I wanted to be retired,
right.
At a very young age. And so within 3 years, I was able to leave my job and be a full-time real estate investor. And so about that time, that's when 2008 hit. So I did my first deal on November 10th, 2005. I left my job November 7th, 2008. Yep. And anybody that's old enough to remember, the economy in 2008 wasn't good, and it was the worst economy since, the Depression. Mm-hmm. There was, massive layoffs and a lot of, businesses closing, banks going out of business. And here I was, most people were clinging to job security, and I was actually, leaving my job, and everybody thought I was crazy. 2008 hit and all that happened, and I saw an opportunity. And so I ended up, within a 4-year period of that time, I had about 30 houses in my portfolio in 2008 when that happened. And 4 years later, I had about 450 houses in my portfolio. And I had saved, 7 figures in cash in my bank account and had built a real business and, really grew it. So, I don't know how deep you want me to go, but I just want to make sure we're heading in the right direction.
Yeah. No, that's great. When that girlfriend dumped you, right? When she, that had to have been a gut. That's just basically saying you aren't anything, right? That's how you probably took it.
Yeah. So I just felt like that I was being held to a standard that wasn't possible for me. Mm-hmm. I felt helpless because she was around doctors in her job all day. Right. And they were smart enough up here to get really good grades and spend a lot of time in college and get a job that they could make a lot of money. And I felt like that's not possible for me.
Right. Because of how you were raised and how you grew up and the experiences and what you were exposed to.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. We lived in really crappy rental properties. And, anytime I asked my dad, we would drive down the street and I would see a nice house. And
Yeah.
what I thought was a nice house and what's really actually a nice house is two different. I thought the $200,000. We wouldn't dare drive into the neighborhoods with $1 million houses. We
Right.
drove into the neighborhoods with $200,000 houses, and I just remember asking my dad, like, "How is that possible? How can
Right.
that person afford that house?
Right.
We live basically like in the ghetto of our town."
Uh-huh.
And he always had the same answer for me. He always just said they inherited the money. And
Oh,
it was never a conversation of, well, Matt, you know what, that's an entrepreneur and he took it was never that conversation. It was
yeah.
they inherited the money every
Yeah.
time.
Oh, every time. So that was that. Okay. Wow. But that's had to been passed down before them, but to him from his dad or his parents, right?
Mhm. Yeah, I mean, my dad is he'll be 80 years old this year, so you got to
Hmm.
figure he 80 years ago, you're in the 40s. That's not
Yep.
that long after the Great Depression. So he grew up as a child of the Great Depression, you know what I mean?
Yep.
So they had a different view of things probably back then. So I don't hold any of that against my parents. In fact, I thank them for it because it's that upbringing that helped form the the ability for me to do what I've done. I mean, when
Yeah.
you start with nothing and you have nothing and you grew up with nothing and you didn't, I mean, I got made fun of for the clothes I wore in high school. I got made fun of for the car I drove. When you put that kind of armor on and you can
Yeah.
make it through that, nothing really scares you. A lot of
Yeah.
people would ask me like, man, aren't you afraid to go through, like what happens if you lose everything? And my thing is nobody wants to lose everything, but if I
Hmm.
lost everything, I could get it all back. I
Right.
don't want to have to do that, but I'm not afraid to take risk. And maybe that's the reason. Maybe because when you start with nothing, you can go back there.
Well, another thing here that I'm noticing a trend in is that when you start with nothing, like, and people made fun of you through high school and what you wore and what you drove and all that stuff, other people's opinions go out of the window, and you're not confined by those, and you're not in the social norms of like, oh, you can't do that, or somebody's going to make fun of you. You've already gotten past that aspect in life, and
Hmm.
you don't care anymore.
No,
A lot
no.
of people haven't even gotten to that point yet in life and where they can say, I don't care about what somebody else thinks about me. That's the jail cell that most people are in.
Yeah. No, that leads to a lot of destruction over time because people want to live a certain perception of what they want. They want to have a perception that they're rich and famous and nothing ever happened, especially now in the social media days.
Yeah.
Everybody's after that status piece.
Yeah.
And that's probably why. I mean, I'm pretty. I mean, I'm not saying I haven't been flashy in the past. When I started making a lot of money, I bought the bright orange Lambo, and I was buying a Rolex every week, type, the Rolex of the month club,
Right.
and all that stuff. I'm not saying I didn't go through that phase. I think anybody that goes through, that has zero money growing up, and everything they're told that, hey, we can't afford that. And then all of a sudden you start making 25, 50, 75,000 plus a week
Right.
and beyond. Then all of a sudden you go through a phase that you can afford anything. And it really, if you get really good at cash flow and you get good at making money, you can blow all your money and you have it back the next week.
Yeah.
So then you start thinking, you go the opposite direction and you start blowing money that you shouldn't. I'm not saying it's smart. Anybody listening right now should definitely learn from my
Right.
mistakes there, because I wish I had some of that money back at times, but I don't regret any of that. It was just part of the evolution I had to go through in order to get to where I'm at right now.
We're all growing, we're all growing. We all have, and they think that people with a bunch of money don't have any issues. We all have issues, right?
Yeah.
Whether some form or another, we're all working through something at any
Yeah.
given time.
We have relationship problems. We have, if people think money makes all the other things disappear, and we all have the same. We have relationship problems. We have everyday issues coming up. We have problems with kids.
Yep.
That stuff happens, and money doesn't change that.
Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely.
The only difference is, if you've got the money side of it right, you can write checks to solve some of those problems in some cases.
Yeah. And so, yeah, exactly. Some of the issues that we have are money issues, and we can write a check to that just eliminates some issues. Money
Hmm.
doesn't solve all of the
No,
issues.
no, it might be able to make it a little easier.
Right.
You know, in some
Right.
cases. In relationship problems, nothing really helps those.
No, money doesn't matter.
Those are
Unless you're
books.
dating a 4-year-old, a lady 4 years older than you that is around doctors and you don't have any money.
Right,
Then
exactly.
then it might
That's that
make
problem.
something
But
change.
if I wouldn't have gone through that, I wouldn't
No,
be where I'm at today.
no, I totally believe that life happens for us, not to us.
Yeah, yeah. So I wanted to tell you, because I know the premise of your show is about people that overcome obstacles, and I think it would be I'd be doing the listeners a disservice if I couldn't tell some of the rest of the story.
Yeah.
Because let's take a step back. I started in 2005 with zero money. I went into 2008 and I had about 30 houses in my portfolio, putting off about $5,000 a month in cash flow. And I had all my debt paid and about $20,000 in cash saved up. And I took that from late 2008, 4 or 5 years later, I had 450 houses in my portfolio. I had 7 figures in cash in my bank account. I had a lot of cash flow, and I had at least an 8-figure net worth at that point in time, very, very quickly, all in a short amount of time.
Right.
But, and I really thought I really felt like I was bulletproof. I thought that I was indestructible. Like nothing, I thought I have enough cash in the bank. Doesn't matter what happens, I'm safe. I just really thought that. And I've always been I've never been over the top, like arrogant or anything like that. But I was probably walking the edge where I thought, man, I'm just untouchable. And
Right.
so when you get to that level, you will get humbled. And at some point in time, you think you're smarter than everybody else, and you will make stupid decisions and make mistakes in your business that could get you in a lot of trouble. And so for me, I had hired, at this point, I'm sitting on a pile of cash. My bankers are telling me that I'm one of the wealthiest real estate investors in town. And I'm just thinking I'm untouchable. And I had this property manager managing all my properties. Now, I had 450 houses. Okay, that's a lot of mortgages, right? I didn't own a lot. Most of those had a mortgage on them. They weren't all free and clear. I probably owned maybe a dozen of them free and clear at that point in time.
Okay.
And that's how I was able to grow the portfolio. I would pay cash, fix it up, refinance, pull my money back, go to the next house really quickly. So, with that being said, even though I was sitting on a lot of cash, in terms of my portfolio size, $1 million in cash isn't a lot of money. Not when you have that many houses.
Right.
And so what happened was I had this property manager managing my properties, and she kept paying me my rents later and later. So, typically you go through a month, and then by maybe the 10th of the next month, you got your rent money, right?
Right.
In some places, it's even quicker than that. Like it's, hey, after the rent's due on the 1st, Matt, we're going to cut you your rent check on the 15th. You got all your money. Well, it went from the 15th to the 20th, and then it went to the 30th, or the 1st of the next month. And then it went the 1st of the next month to the 15th of the next month. Now I'm 6 weeks behind. And she always had a reason for it. Well, this and this, and I just want to make sure we collect all your rent. Some people are late pay. It's just easier if I pay you once. And so eventually that stretched out into 2 months. So I got 450 houses, and the rent I haven't been paid for 2 months. Yep. And I mean, let's just do some quick, easy math for everybody listening. Let's say the average rent was, just for easy math, it wasn't quite this high, but just for easy math, if the rent was $1,000 per month per property, that's $450,000 a month times 2 is $900,000. Now she also had all my security deposits on that 450 houses. So let's throw another $1,000 per house there. Now we're into $1.2 million bucks. Okay, the actual number was about $1 million, but I just went and she also had all my maintenance reserves as well. And so I wasn't getting paid on my rent, and I was getting frustrated, and it kept pushing out. And one day I had enough, and I just said, hey, I'm pulling the management from you. Meet me. I want to meet, and I want a cashier's check and all my keys and leases and everything. I want you to bring everything, and I want the money, and I want it today. And so she was hit and miss on texting, and finally she said, okay, I'll meet you at 1:00 today. 1:00 came and went. I never met her, and she didn't respond. And come to find out, she tried to commit suicide. And So next thing I know, she tries to commit suicide, and she's in the hospital, and is unsuccessful at committing suicide, and then leaves in the middle of the night and moves out of her apartment that she had rented, and she disappears. Now, the day that this happened was September 22nd, 2015. I remember it like it was yesterday because it was the worst day of my life. So now all of a sudden, I've covered all the mortgages. My reserves are being zapped immediately, and she's gone. It's September 22nd. I got 8 days. I don't manage any of my properties. I don't know who a single tenant is that lives in my house. I don't have a single lease. I don't have any keys. My tenants don't know who I am. And I've got 8 days before rent's due in October.
Right.
Okay. Now, at that point, I live in Arizona and not in Iowa where all my properties are. So I get on a plane and I fly back. I have one employee that's an assistant, and I have one employee that's a bookkeeper, and I don't have any other employees. I have to figure out how to hire some people. You know how long it takes to drive to 450 houses and knock on the door and introduce yourself, who you are, and how they should be paying a stranger the rent money.
Right.
It's not easy, and most people didn't believe us. And so we posted notice on 450 houses somehow, and I was able to start collecting some of the rent by the 1st of October of that year. Okay. But as the story goes, a lot of the tenants stopped paying because they didn't know who they use it as an excuse, right? Nobody wants to be a bad person. So what people will do is they'll twist the truth in their mind and try to figure out how to become a good guy and blame the other guy. Hey, I don't know you. You haven't, I need a deed. Where's my lease? And they'll just figure out a reason not to pay. And so I started losing about $100,000 a month where tenants wouldn't pay the rent, or they vacated immediately. A lot of them were mad because the maintenance wasn't getting done from the property manager. So they used that as an excuse to break their lease. And so I lost $100,000 a month for the next 10 or 12 months. All my cash reserves are now gone.
Right. At
this point, I've had about $20,000 or so left of all my money so it's 2005. Now it's in 2016. I've been in real estate at this point 11 years, and I have 20 grand left. I don't know how I'm going to make I can make payroll for this week, but I can't make payroll for next week. It's over. And as soon as you don't make payroll and you stop paying all your bills, everybody quits and leaves, and you're bankrupt.
Right.
And so I don't know how I'm going to put it together. I'm trying to get some houses sold, and I'm literally thinking it's over. I'm bankrupt. I just put in the toughest 10 years of my life. I took every penny and put it back into the business. All my cash reserves are gone. I'm going bankrupt. And so, but I kept grinding. I'm like one of those guys that will, just keep fighting and fighting and fighting and fighting and fighting. And I just never give up. And so I got a house. Somehow I got a house sold. I sold a house, and it brought in a little bit of money. And then I got another one sold, and now we're into late 2016, and I started to get some momentum. And I don't know if it was just desperation and having to come up with enough money to pay my staff,
right,
and pay the bills. But I sold another house, and then by the time 2017 had hit, I was doing some momentum. So from late 2016 to early 2017, I think I sold 27 houses or so in January of 2017. And by the end of that year of 2017, I had sold 334 houses, and I sold them for a really high price because the market was doing better than where it was when I bought them. I bought a lot of those houses in the downturn. And so I did about $33 million in sales in 2017. I got all my cash back. I replenished all my reserves, put a pile of cash in my bank, and was able to rebound and recover and make quite a bit of money over the next following year. So I tell that story because, I was on the brink of bankruptcy. I really thought I was going to lose everything. My confidence was destroyed. I knew I would work. I worked a lot of hours. Some people exaggerate how many hours they work, and they say they work 10 or 12 hours a day. They probably working about 5. I was legit working 20 hours a day, and I was working 6.5 days a week, and sometimes 7. And I put in the effort. I didn't let up for a minute. And I kept telling myself during that time period that I'm going to learn something from this whole thing, and I'm going to come out stronger on the other side. And that's exactly what happened.
Mm-hmm.
And I learned a lot of lessons during that whole thing, and so I really feel like that helped me put me in the position that I'm in right now. I learned you go through a very fast learning curve when you're losing 100,000 a month. So
Oh, absolutely. It's got to be at that point. You're sitting there all alone. Let's take it back real quick to this real quick, because I can't imagine what this day's like. September 22nd, right? We're going to meet at 1:00, and you have to have some inclination of what's happening.
she didn't have the money. I knew it.
And it's going through your head, and like, what's coming down the road, like the next couple years, what it's going to be like, what you're going to go through. And you just made the decision. You just said, listen, I'm going to make this happen. You jumped on a plane, went to Arizona, and said, let's go.
Yeah. Yep.
That's pretty impressive.
Yeah, I had to start I hired, I had a lot of houses to maintain. We had to do work on them. We had to collect rent, and I hired probably 12 or 13 people within like 3 weeks.
Yeah.
I didn't make the best hires in some cases, but other hires were really good. Some of those people are still with me right now.
Oh, wow.
And we learned how to manage property, right? I
Mm-hmm.
I managed my own properties in the very beginning up till I had like 30 of them. And I had to go back onto some of those skill sets, and we were able to start collecting rent. But yeah, you have to. Those are the moments in time that you're being tested to see if you're going to break or if you're going to get stronger.
Yeah.
I want to say that most people would have broke during that time period, and I was just not willing to. I had so many people. I think here's the big reason I made it. It wasn't for the money. I love making money, and I love making 7 figures a year plus. And I love the lifestyle that money gives me, but I don't need it.
Mm-hmm.
I live very simply. I'm not a flashy guy.
Mm-hmm.
And the thing that made it through here's why I survived, and here's why I did well. Because so many people, when I was building out my real estate business, so many people told me I would not make it. You would not be able to build. Like, I would tell people about, man, someday I want to own all these houses, and I want to flip houses. I want to drive nice cars, and I want to live in a nice house. And people laughed at me. And there's a lot of people that said, oh, you're going to go broke, this and that. And I had so many people try to hurt me on the way up that I didn't want them laughing at me on my way down.
Yep.
That was what kept me going. That was what fueled me. That was when I woke up every day with burning red eyes, because I'm not sleeping. And I just didn't want to go bankrupt, because I didn't want those people making fun of me. And I didn't want all the people at the machine shop saying, I told you so. I told you wouldn't make it.
Yep. I don't know. What do you call that? Is that pride? Is that ego? What is that? Is it that internal drive to say, I am not failing. I am going to finish this out and continue on? Is like, you see that with everybody who's super successful. Everybody who makes something out of their life always go through shit.
Yeah. Yeah. You talk to, anybody that's, I know a lot of people that have made a lot of money, and I know a lot of people that have lost a lot of money. In fact, that's kind of the insider joke to all the best entrepreneurs. They're really good at making money and really bad at keeping money.
Mm-hmm.
And, it's not, it really is not hard to make money. It really is fairly easy to make money.
Mm-hmm.
To make, 500,000, $1 million a year is not very hard to do, but it's really hard to keep it for whatever reason. Us entrepreneurs think we just, something inside of us thinks, man, I made $1 million this year. I am the smartest guy on the planet. Anything I touch is going to turn to gold. Yep. And so we get so smart with all this money in our bank account. We get so smart. We invested in stuff that it disappears. I think we get curious. I think we get, whatever. And we start putting money into stuff that we have no business putting money into.
Yeah.
I've had stuff. I've just lost so much money on stupid stuff over the years, investments and stuff like that. There isn't a single entrepreneur Entrepreneurs are the most optimistic people you'll ever meet.
Easiest to sell too.
Yeah, we just think that we're going to make it turn into gold.
Yep.
So I just think that that's the case a lot of times, and you make this money, and then you figure out it somehow leaves you, and hopefully when you get smarter and it's happened to you once or twice, you start realizing that, hey, when I make some money, it goes over here and we don't touch that, and it just goes and grows.
Yeah, absolutely. Now it's super exciting to hear these comeback stories, these up and coming stories, these adversity, overcoming all of it that's been thrown in you, and it's just so refreshing, because here's the thing: there's some people that never even heard of you, don't know you from Adam, but you're making $1 million. It's not like you're all over IG and you're flashing. I mean, you have Rolexes and you have nice cars and stuff, but it's not like that's the play. And there's so many people out there that own businesses that are creating jobs for other people, that are creating the lifestyle of what they actually want. And I think that's also key, is to figure out what you want in life. Like you love the lake house, right? And you love being out there all the time. It's just find that thing that you really enjoy to do.
Yeah, be authentic. Be authentic to yourself.
Yeah.
Just because you see, there's guys on social media that are driving Lambos and all the super nicest, Ferraris and all that stuff, and maybe they love that stuff, and that's awesome if they do. And I love the fact that people are creating businesses that pay them enough to be able to do that stuff. But that doesn't have to be what everybody loves,
Right. Yeah.
If that's not you, and you make a bunch of money, go do your own thing. Be true to yourself, because at the end of the day, your happiness is going to come not from a Lambo. Let me just tell you, I had a Lambo that I almost never drove at one point. I mean, it sat. It actually, the battery died because I hadn't started it so many months straight that I actually had to have it towed, and because I just never turned it on. Everybody else thought it was cool, and I just thought it was a car that was hard to get in and out of.
They are tight.
I'm 230 pounds, 6 foot 230. It's not easy for me to get in and out of a Lambo. I pulled a hamstring one time. It was not good.
No, definitely not. I got in one the other week, and it was super uncomfortable. And I was like, man, this would be fun just for like a short trip, but to like continually drive this thing, that would be a pain in the butt.
But I mean, again, I don't want to take the shine off of somebody else that loves that stuff. There are real car people out there that freaking love that stuff, and that's awesome. And that's why you create a business. You create a business that's supposed to make you money and pay. You should be able to do any of that stuff. What I want to do, so Kyle, my main thing right now is this lake house that I'm on right now. I know it's winter out right now. It looks like there's a lot of snow and stuff, but I'm about an hour away from anything out here.
Yeah.
And so what I want to do is there's a house that's across the lake that I want to buy. It's the nicest one on the lake, and I want to buy that house at some point, and I want to put a helipad pad in, and I want to be able to get a helicopter. Not because I think helicopters are cool, because I want to be a guy with a helicopter, but because it takes me an hour to drive, or I could get in a helicopter and fly and be somewhere in 10 minutes.
Yeah,
so that's kind of like the stuff that I like thinking about now, because I'm a time guy. Like, I just want to save time. I don't like wasting time. I realize, I think this happens to all of us when we get older too. You realize that the money's great and all that, but I'm still getting older every year. I'm still, that's not changing. And eventually the time is going to run out. And I want to just make sure I'm using all those minutes like I want.
What would you say? Because, I mean, you and I both probably know this answer to create a business. I mean, if you're not an athlete, if you're not a ball player, if you're not a rapper or singer or something, you got to create a business to create wealth, right?
Mm-hmm.
And some tips and stuff that you could give somebody to like overcome maybe that hesitancy of taking that step. I mean, guys, if you haven't listened to his story, I mean, he grew up in a small house and was able to create your lifestyle now. Like, so what are three things that somebody could focus on to help them in that process?
Well, I think first of all, one thing that you have to get good at is you have to get good at managing your money. If you create a business that, and I know guys like this, if you create a business that makes you a lot of money and you spend every penny of it, you will be miserable. You will be absolutely miserable. I know a guy right now makes $100,000 a week net, and he spends $110,000 a week, and the dude is miserable. He's just got a crazy, insane lifestyle, and everybody thinks it's amazing, but it's not.
Yeah.
That's the stress that I would not want to live. So one is money management is important to the point where get enough cash that you do have, that you are safe, that if bad things happen, you can overcome those things. Everybody thinks that cash is, and if it's not cash, something liquid that you could put the money into that you could cash out quick. It's not just cash. But you need liquidity. Right. So that's one thing. Get liquid, get liquidity so that you and manage your money well enough. The second thing is get around a bunch of people, or get around somebody, one person, two people, five people. Get into a group of some sort that you can be around like-minded people that can continually challenge your mindset to take you to new heights. Because the second thing I see happen to a lot of people, entrepreneurs that make a lot of money, is they end up, there's a saying in the Bible that the idle hands is the devil's workshop. And that happens to a lot of entrepreneurs. It happens to people in Hollywood. It's not Hollywood. It's the fact that somebody just made $3 million and they don't have to work for the next 2 years. Right. If you make a whole bunch of money and all of a sudden you don't need to work, if you don't have your mindset on something, bad things you're probably going to pick up some bad habits. You'll be doing some things you should not be doing. And so you have to be around groups of people that constantly help you set new goals. Man, I set a goal here and I made this and I did all that. Okay, cool. Matt, what are you going to do next? Let's talk about that. Like you have to, and those are masterminds in a lot of times. Yeah. Right. So get around groups of people that are going to push your brain so that you don't get idle. Yeah. Right. I'm not saying don't take time off and let your brain relax. I'm a believer that you should rest, but you can't rest too long. And then third thing would be, I would always be thinking long term, right? If you're going to build a business, if you're going to build any type of an investment of some sort, build it into a cash flow model. Because when I say cash flow, I mean reoccurring income, residual income, because you will get tired of the hustle. You will eventually get tired. When I'm 46 right now. In 2015, when all that stuff happened to me, I was 40. And when I started my real estate business, I was 30. And let me tell you, at 30 years old, I had a hell of a lot more energy and testosterone flowing than I do right now. I get tired easier, and it doesn't matter. Some people say, well, I work out every day, and that's awesome. You should. You should be in, work out and get exercise and all that. But you can't fight time. Time will always win. Yep. And so get to the point where your business is generating residual income. Figure out how to make your business a cash flow machine. And if you can do that, then at some point you will get to an age, 55, 60 years old, 70, where you can say, hey, I don't have to hustle anymore. Doesn't mean you're not going to work. I'm not saying not work. You can still work, but you don't have to hustle it out and grind it and make enough money to pay the bills. If you can build your business into a residual model, then the stress is off and you can just do the work that you feel like doing.
That's it, man. That's so true, because it's the expenses that cause the stress, and if you don't have the money coming in, the expenses are the ones that cause the stress.
Yep.
So I love it. I'm just so super glad and privileged that you were able to come on the show and share this story, man. Where can people, like, if they want to connect with you and learn more from you and follow you on your journey and everything else that you're doing, where can they find you?
Yeah. So, unfortunately, Kyle, I had my Instagram got hacked and I got my account shut down. So I just started a new one. Literally, I have like 32 followers because I haven't really, I haven't shouted it out yet or told anybody about it. I haven't emailed my list, but I'm getting ready to do that. But I have my new Instagram is at Real Matt Larson, and Larson is with an O. So Real Matt Larson on Instagram, you can find me there. I'm going to be building that out soon. And then I'm on Facebook all the time, as you know, and my website is realestatemat.com. So you can find me in one way, shape, or form in those. And if you send me a message on social media, I'm the guy that will respond to you, and I respond to everybody. So that's really me.
Yeah, no, guys, if Matt has a ton of products on there, if you're interested in getting into real estate, I mean, I don't think there. I've bought some of Matt's stuff, and it's just complete, like as much information packed in there as you can possibly get. I mean, a lot of value in that. So if you're interested in that, go check it out. But again, Matt, I appreciate it, man. Thank you so much for jumping on and sharing the story.
Yeah, man. I love doing this stuff. I'm glad.
Absolutely. Thanks, brother.
This is thepodcastfactory.com.